Hello again, and welcome to Arch Eats, where we take a deeper dive into the things that listeners may not know about the restaurant scene here in St. Louis. With me, as always, on this journey is my friend, co-host, co-pilot, cohort, Cheryl Bear. And I can say happy holidays again, my friend.
Yes, happy holidays. I wish we were doing this with a webcam. They would see our festive gear today.
I'm not sure that would be a great idea, but it's hard for me to take you seriously in those reindeer antlers. But I'm glad you wore them.
This episode of Arch Eats is sponsored by Westport Plaza.
Joining us will be restaurateur Ben Poremba. Then we will finish, as we always do, with a micro rant, this time about restaurant appetizers, specifically how they're traditionally served and how they should be served. But first, we'll begin, as we always do, with what I can't stop thinking about this week. And Cheryl, you gave me a hint, and I can't believe you're going there again.
Well, I'm trying to redeem the green bean casserole. So I'm sure I broke a lot of hearts, or maybe no one really cares, but
Grandma's hearts.
Yes, I broke a lot of grandma's hearts and maybe Campbell's Soup Company's heart when I professed my deep-seated disdain for the green bean casserole. I don't need to rehash that. It's just not my favorite dish. It's not even close to my favorite dish. It's maybe my least favorite holiday dish. However, I recently went to Cellar House, which is a restaurant in Oakville, deep South County. Chloe Yates is the chef. It's just a wonderful neighborhood restaurant. She's doing a lot of fun things there. And one of the things she's doing is they've turned the entire restaurant into a Christmas pop-up dinner. They aren't just doing some holiday specials. They've basically thrown out their regular menu.
And their cocktail menu.
And they are doing really wonderful kind of traditional, think figgy pudding and goose pie and all of these just very quintessential kind of old school Christmas dishes. One of the dishes she's doing is a take on the green bean casserole that is wonderful. It is actually a savory cannoli. So think green bean casserole, but instead it is haricot vert, just sautéed. They are stuffed into a house-made super flaky cannoli shell.
Green bean. Did you say green bean cannoli?
Yes, a green bean cannoli.
That's
I promise
take me
you.
a second.
And my Italian foremothers and forefathers, they would approve. It's actually quite delicious. And then instead of the Campbell's soup filling, she puts like a mushroom, kind of like a creamy mushroom sauce at the bottom of the plate and then stacks 2 cannoli on top of there. It is delicious. It is the green bean casserole for green bean casserole haters.
Wow. That really, actually, I'm giving you a hard time, but it really does sound
It's a lot of fun.
And this goes all through December, I think, until the 6th, maybe,
until the 6th.
January.
January 6th, I believe, is the last day of it. It's really a lot of fun stuff.
So the thing I can't stop thinking about this week is a croissant, specifically a chocolate croissant. And I think we've talked about these before, but this is possibly the best one I've ever had. I had it last week at a place called 23 West Coffee, a new coffee shop in Webster Groves. And the thing that's different, we talked about these chocolate croissants. They've got those little, what do they call them? Little nubs of chocolate.
Sure.
They call chocolate batons, and there's never enough in there as far as I'm concerned.
Never.
And apparently that's the classic way to make them, but it's not the best way to make them, in my opinion. There's a place called Luciana's Pastries, which I've never heard of. It's up in Alton. They supply the pastries to 23 West Coffee, and they make a chocolate croissant that's, crescent-shaped, right? And instead of those little nubs of chocolate, there's like a river of chocolate in there. I mean, it's solid chocolate, and it is so good. And what makes it doubly delicious is I think they take a little... It tasted like honey. They brushed a little honey on top. So you've got this little chewy component to this. I cut it up with a knife and fork because it was so sticky. And let me tell you, it was a really, really good croissant.
So the chocolate in the center, is it gooey or you said it's solid?
It's
kind of midpoint.
It's gollid.
Okay. We coined a term on Archie.
It's a little of each. But anyway, this is, again, I don't know much about Luciana's Pastries. They're up in Alton. They have, I know, a high tea that they're doing in February, which I've got my eye on. I just know their pastries are delicious. They've got, in the case, they've got almond horns, and They've got muffins and they've got quiche and they've got lemon tarts, oatmeal bars. I mean, I practically memorized this because I want to try every one of these. But they also have a chocolate pecan tart that might be the best one of those I've ever had.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, 23 West Coffee, go for the coffee, indulge in the pastry.
Wow. Well, I will definitely be heading there.
And I'm told the scones are incredible, quote unquote. So all this on my list. Great coffee. Don't sleep on the pastries.
And maybe even take a road trip to Alton, too, if
Yeah.
you want to check out the
Yep,
pastries.
nope. Yeah, that's right. I might just go there when we get done right here.
Right.
I'm ready to go. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we will talk at length with restaurateur Ben Poremba, who has lots of surprises in store.
This fall and winter, Westport Plaza is welcoming Soda Fountain Express and 360 Westport. Soda Fountain Express is a spin on a classic diner and burger joint from the 50s and is a great place to host private events, birthday parties, and more. 360 Westport is a modern rooftop bar and lounge featuring cocktails, expansive wine list, and small plates. Come for a cocktail or dinner with a hand-picked bottle of wine from the sommelier. Follow Westport Plaza on social media at WestportSTL to stay informed about giveaways and upcoming events. Experience the unexpected at Westport Plaza.
And now, back to the show.
As promised, with us today on Arch Eats is Ben Poremba, a familiar name to just about everyone within earshot of this broadcast. But just in case, Ben is a 3-time James Beard Award semifinalist. He's the owner of Bengelina Hospitality Group, which operates 6 restaurants, as well as A.O. & Co., that little bit of everything culinary shop in Botanical Heights. Ben is one of the most prolific and passionate members of the local restaurant community. Welcome to the podcast, Ben. No pressure.
Hey, George. Thanks for having me on. Hey, Cheryl. Nice to see you again.
Great to see you.
Suffice to say, you're a busy guy right now.
Yeah, tons of stuff going on. Obviously, as I've announced before, 3 of my restaurants, including my flagship and the one I'm most known about, Elia and Olio, and Nixta, are all going to be closing down at their current location at the end of the year. December 31st is going to be the last day at their Tar Grove locations, and they're going to be relocating to the Delmar Maker District. That's that stretch on Delmar between Union and Kings Highway.
Before we get over to that area, on New Year's Eve, on the last night, I'm assuming everything's sold out, but can people just stop by and walk in to say farewell, or is it just going to be too crazy?
I actually did something probably counterintuitive from a business perspective. I decided not to have any events, any ticketed events on that night, and just really celebrate my staff, celebrate the time we've had there. And so Nixta, Olio, and Elia are going to be closed I shouldn't say closed. We're going to just host a big party at Olio starting at 8 p.m. No tickets, like I said, no reservations. The bar is going to be open for business. We're probably going to put some food out, but I just wanted people to actually do exactly what you just mentioned. Come in, come through, have a nice time and reminisce and bid farewell.
So Cheryl and I can just stop by. That's what you're saying.
Yes, exactly. As you should. So, it actually, this year's New Year's Eve falls on a Sunday, which kind of works out really, really well. So our official service day at Elia, Olio, and Nixta will be that night. And then we decided that the next day we'll give my staff a little time off and actually celebrate them. So at 8 p.m., we'll just do a big party.
Sounds great.
These are places that have meant so much to so many people, and obviously they've meant so much to you. We're just kind of curious if it's bittersweet, if it's mixed emotions, if it feels like the right time, maybe all of the above.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's bittersweet. It's the intuitive thing to say. We've been at those locations I started working on Olio and Elia almost 14 years ago. I mean, it took a couple of years to build. So yeah, of course. I mean, it's my corner, right? I have Olio and Elia, and I have Nixta, and I have Shuket, and I have A.O. & Co. And, I'm proud of what I was able to do over there. So yeah, absolutely. It feels a little sad, but At the same time, I think that there is kind of like a natural expiration date to a lot of those things. And I'm personally very excited for the opportunity. I know when you're at the same place for such a long time, you tend to sort of accept certain things, and this is a huge opportunity to sort of bake in, pour in new foundation, and do things that I've always wanted to do. I was just maybe lazy, maybe just the inertia of things just kept me away from doing. Maybe too comfortable. The opportunity now is tremendous, and I really really like that stretch on Delmar. I think it's maybe the coolest yet undiscovered part. There's so much budding energy, creative energy with Third Degree Glass Factory and with Made STL and with other restaurant operators that are coming over there, like Steve's Hot Dogs and Fountain on Locust and Alpha Brewing. I tend to look forward in everything I do. So I'm more happy, more excited than I am sad, but I am a little, it's that kind of feel.
I remember, Ben, when you were originally talking about this, I think you were over there in a coffee shop and somebody approached you. I think it was one of the guys from Third Degree Glass. Do I have this story right? And he said, "Hey, Ben, do you want to do a restaurant over here?" Or how did that come about? Because as I recall, the story was pretty funny.
Yeah, so opening Deli Divine, I was driving every day for the last 2 years on Delmar. Um, and I just there was kind of first you're just driving right through. I'm probably on the phone, and slowly I started noticing the street looked clean and looked like it was loved and looked like there was a lot of energy there. I remember driving there one night on a Friday night, and they're holding this open house this Friday, third Friday of the month, open house at Glass Factory. And the street was packed with cars. There was light out there. It had just so much energy. And at that point, I've already made the decisions to leave Tar Grove, and was actively looking for either a new neighborhood or for a new building. And I looked everywhere. I mean, my day was packed with real estate brokers calling me left and right, developers. Come to Kirkwood, come to Chesterfield, come to Cuttleville, stay in the city. Just every day, I saw so much stuff, a lot of cool stuff. But nothing gave me this sort of kind of this energy that I saw in Delmar. And then the story is that I was sitting at Brew to Loom, the now closed coffee shop. Um, and I looked across from Brew to Loom, and there was a new development, looked like a restaurant was being built. And I ran into Doug Auer, who's now one of my I should say partners on this. He's the landlord on a few of these buildings that I'm going into. Doug is the founder of Third Degree Glass Factory with Jim McKelvey. And Doug told me that the restaurant that we're going to do across the street is no longer a thing, and if I wanted to tour. And so I said, absolutely. And I got a tour of that restaurant. But moreover, we just started walking up and down Delmar, and he took me to Made Man, which is an architecture office right by Third Degree, and gave me this kind of like overview, kind of like his vision for the street. And at that point, I really had this, I mentioned this to people, like I had a kind of like a similar feel, like this exhilaration, this exhilarating vibe inside that tells me, oh my God, this is where I should be. There is so much opportunity, and there's so much opportunity for growth. Tons of buildings that needed loving, and right there and then I called my partners and I said, hey, I think I found our new neighborhood, and quickly like started working on deals and started spending more time there. And so what I should tell you is, and this is kind of like how crazy my mind works, and you're the first, and you're the first people I'm gonna tell this to. But before we're relocating Nixta, which will happen in hopefully April, and Olio and Elia, which probably won't happen until the summer of 24. We're introducing two new concepts to this neighborhood. And so in 2024, we're going to be opening 5 restaurants on Delmar. The two new concepts, one I briefly talked about, is going to be Esca. That's kind of a coastal Mediterranean concept that is going to be in right there on the corner. That's the first building that I saw. And coastal Mediterranean food with an emphasis on charcoal grilling, a very elemental, gorgeous space. And then I'm hoping that's gonna open as early as February. Valentine's Day is sort of our big day. And then once Brutal Loom closed down, it just made all the sense in the world for me to take over that space. There's several aspects here, right? It's a space in a neighborhood that I'm going to try to dominate as far as the culinary scene goes. It's a space that's fairly, fully built. I mean, we're going to change tons of stuff inside, but the big thing for me here is that I made a commitment to my employees, especially those who've been with me for a long time, that it doesn't matter if it takes us 6 months or 9 months or a year to open those restaurants, that they're going to be employed with me and that they don't have to go anywhere or worry about that. And so, sure, some of them we're going to place at the deli, and some of them are going to go to Benevolent King, and some of them are going to go to Barmoral, and some of them are going to be help. Some of them are going to help me open this new restaurant, Esca. But it's still it's dozens of people, literally dozens of people that I'm going to need to pay for their livelihood. And what better way to do this than opening a new spot? So this Brutal Loom space we're calling Florentine. It is named after my favorite neighborhood in Tel Aviv, and it's basically a Tel Aviv inspired all-day breakfast and lunch spot with a huge emphasis on shakshuka, those delicious eggs that are basically poached or braised in this chunky tomato sauce from North Africa. This menu is almost 95% vegan vegetarian. It's great. Look, fresh juices. We're going to open as early as 8 a.m. My hope is to open as early as 8 a.m. So it's giving me an opportunity to both give employment or continue employment, retain employment, I should say. It's giving me an opportunity to place a lot of my furniture and a lot of my equipment instead of in a store, it's actually put them to use. And it's another element from this neighborhood. One thing I learned from doing a neighborhood, right, from cooking up a neighborhood, is that you need diversity of businesses and you need different price points. And so you want people there at different times of day, spending their money and being entertained at different levels. So, Esca is going to be a little more pricey than Olio, obviously less pricey than Elia. And that cafe is going to be kind of like a super approachable, everybody, basically a place where everybody can come to. So this sort of daytime, nighttime, middle of the day, different price points is super important. So you can attract a wider market.
Yeah, I think you said Esca will be, I want to say, unique in St. Louis in that it's got the only coal burning appliance, right? You're going to be cooking the meats and the fishes and the vegetables over coal.
Well, the uniqueness of this concept is that we have no other surfaces. It's not like I have, a grill in addition to, a gas stove or all we have there is just a charcoal oven, and we're going to try to do the entire menu out of there. So including possibly baking bread and doing all of our desserts. And so, that's a unique concept for sure.
I think a lot of people are familiar with kind of more Eastern Mediterranean. I think of Olio, Benevolent King, and all of that. You've said that this is going to be Italian Riviera, French Riviera, maybe even into Spain.
Yeah, so for sure. So the idea for Esca is that it's loosely inspired by Western Mediterranean cuisine. So if you kind of think of the Italian and French Rivieras all the way down to the Catalan coast, the western coast of Spain, a little bit of Sicily, maybe a little bit of the Amalfi Coast as well. Um, just this kind of, the French call it the cuisine of the sun. And this is really what inspires this. It's very elemental food. Typically, it's simple salads, a lot of olive oil, uh, um, healthy, a lot of acid, a lot of lemon. We're gonna use a lot of lemon in different ways. Um, so yeah, kind of like that vibe for Esca, which really is kind of like the difference. The new olio, once we do the new olio, gonna be almost the opposite. It's gonna be the eastern part of the Mediterranean. So it'd be interesting to see those two kind of exist side by side.
Ben, I think it's great that you're able to shut 3 places down, but keep everybody busy with your other restaurants, and then almost immediately opening up 2 more in a different part of town. Usually when a restaurant closes, the employees go, "Why? What are we going to do?" You've got that
Right.
covered completely.
Yeah, and so like I said, I mean it's super ambitious. The obvious question that you guys didn't ask me is why not do Olio and Elia in those spaces? Why find new buildings for them? When I saw the first building, the Esca building, right there on Delmar and Academy, it just didn't feel like Olio. It didn't feel like Elia. It didn't feel like Nixta. But I really wanted to do a restaurant in there. And so I told my partners, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a new restaurant. When the Brutaloom space became available, kind of felt a little like Olio-esque, but still not, didn't have that vibe. And one of my managers said, let's just do Olio in residence or something in here. And I just felt like that was going to be super confusing. And so the new Olio and Elia buildings are going to be pretty impressive and ambitious projects, architecturally and operationally. So I will tell you where they're located. They're right by 30 Degree Glass Factory. We're taking the Delmar Lee building. The folks at Delmar Lee, after being in business for I think almost 40 years, have decided to retire. It worked. What's the word?
Serendipitously,
Serendipitously. That's what I was looking for. Once they announced that they are going to close, I went to Doug and said, this has to be Olio. Also a former filling station with this kind of signature glazed white brick on the outside. But we're going to take that building and we're going to take the building behind it. And then we're also going to construct a new building. And so 3 buildings, 2 existing structures, a whole new one. And we're going to connect all 3 of them to house Olio, Elia. And then we're going to move our commissary kitchen from Cherokee Street, where we bake everything, where we cut all of our cheese, where we do a lot of sort of the building blocks of our restaurants. We're going to move into that structure. And so that's going to be almost 8 or 9,000 square foot building, housing, like I said, 2 restaurants and then a big production kitchen. It's going to be very, very cool. Very interesting.
I am so glad that you were able to duplicate Olio in another spot, because you look at Olio and you go, if it's ever done again, it has to be in an old service station. And if you don't do it that way, it's going to lose something. And I'll be darned if one of those wasn't available over on Delmar in the Delmar Lee space. And I drove that stretch and I thought to myself, boy, I hope that's where Olio is going to be. And in fact,
Yeah,
it is.
the constellation of the stars. I mean, I'm not a particularly spiritual in that regard, but that really all worked out. The existing buildings, the Olio, Elia, and Nixta buildings are very tough to operate, and we're very restrictive. And what I'm doing is, I'm going to be able to implement a lot of my ideas for Olio and Elia and Nixta that I wasn't able to do. It's going to be cool, really, really cool. Like some of our planning, at least, is very cool.
Will any of the menus change at Olio or Elia? You've got definitely certain things you do at each one, and this will give you an opportunity to change that a little bit if you want to.
Yeah, for sure. So Olio's menu is probably the most will be. I mean, we'll keep all of our classics and all of our customers' favorites, but what we couldn't do at Olio for real is serve hot food. That just didn't work. We didn't have a hot kitchen, and so the new Olio kitchen will have a grill where we are going to be able to grill meats and do some more substantial food. In addition to the big hummuses and all the things we already do. The Elia menu, the format will probably stay the same, but we're working on some really, really neat ideas as far as the experience itself. And, when I have some more concrete stuff, I'll share it. But again, it's about 6 to 7 months away. So for now, just to suffice to say that things are going to stay the same. The Nixta menu will largely stay the same, except that we're going to introduce what I try to do at the existing location. I'm going to introduce Bar Limon, which always was kind of like a more fun, approachable, cheaper version of Nixta. And this is going to be kind of like a counter inside of Nixta itself that's going to serve ceviches and tostadas and, as the name suggests, things that are cooked in lemon, if you will, cocktails and things like that. The fish cocktails, of course, the seafood cocktails. And so yes, Nixta itself will also have kind of a dual personality, one that's a little more fun and approachable, and then a kind of a more formal dining room.
Sounds like we're up to 5.5 restaurants, Ben. Are you going to keep going?
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
got Nixta, which sounds like with Bar Limon, it's like a restaurant and a half there, right?
It is. It actually is going to be a restaurant and a half. There's like a few other elements that I'm going to keep as a surprise, but yeah, it's Nixta is definitely a restaurant and a half. That space is super cool. This entire development with Alpha Brewing and Steve's Hot Dog and Fountain on Locust is going to be really, really neat. We're going to have some shareable space, kind of like a little green area in the middle of the whole development for people to just come and hang, and it's going to be fun.
My understanding is that the actual production side is a key component of that. Like, people will be able to see certain elements of things being made, and that's part of the experience.
Yeah, that's true. So the whole strip, the idea of makers, really kind of fits with my philosophy. I've always been a big fan of what I call the element of the make, where you can actually see. This is why I have a lot of my kitchens that are out up front. I mean, at Bar More, you could just visibly see it, people making stuff. And so that entire philosophy resonated with me and in keeping with what I do. So at Makers Locale, you're going to be able to see the big steel at Alpha Brewing, and at Nixta, you're going to be able to see people making the tortillas right there in front of you. So, those are the things that in the past people were trying to hide. And for me, that's part of the theater of dining. You just seeing how things are made, and it's part of the show, right? The biggest example of that I have at my existing restaurant is with Joseph, our gardener, having all these, potting soil and all of his gardening tools and all of his things right up at the entrance to the restaurants. And, it's always changing. It's part of the experience. So
I'm just amazed as I'm thinking about it. In 7 or 8 months, we're going to have a part of town that doesn't really have a lot of restaurants. It's going to have I don't know, I lost count. It's 8 or 9 restaurants. It's that stretch of Delmar that is just going to all of a sudden come alive. There'll be synergy right off the bat because these places are basically opening up at the same time.
a year from now, that stretch of Delmar will be dramatically and drastically different.
We just love us some Ben Poremba. So thank you so much for joining us on this podcast today.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Cheryl.
So that brings us to what's often our favorite part of the show, our micro rant. And this week's rant concerns odd-numbered appetizers.
So frustrating.
I'm going to set you up for this. Anyone familiar with architecture or spatial design knows that even numbers are symmetrical, but odd numbers are more interesting. That's why you always see a chef put 3 scallops on a plate or 5 shrimp on a plate. Odd numbers are better, which is fine unless there are 4 or 6 people dining at the table and all of a sudden you have to do some serious, knife work or some serious appetizer subdivision, right? And I always thought, wouldn't it be easier, as we experienced the other night, to be offered a little bit extra, an extra item for a nominal price? If there's 3 to the order and there's 4 at the table, why don't you just add on the 4th? And this happened to us with a beef cheek empanada at Idle Wolf.
Ooh.
Remember, there's 3 to the order there, and there were 4 of us, and we were darn glad to each one of us have one.
Well, God knows you can't be splitting one of those.
No.
Like each person needs their
It
own.
was perfect. Everybody got one, and I thought, this is something that shows the customer that the server is paying attention. It's this subtle detail. It's a touch of hospitality. It's a great upsell, and that's one that nobody's going to refuse. Everybody will opt into that extra morsel. So let's pay attention, restaurant folks, when we do our appetizers, and always make sure that everybody gets a taste.
Sure.
That's it this week, folks, for Arch Eats Best Dishes, and might I say, Happy New Year. There are links in the show notes to all the places we talked about today. We encourage you to follow Arch Eats and share us with your friends. And remember that we put out a new episode every other week. You can also subscribe to our newsletters at stlmag/newsletters, or follow us on Instagram at St. Louis Mag, or follow me at George Mahey.